Michael Norton here, head of Miami at Lumicity, battery expert who's worked in the renewable space for 7 years. And I'm joined by my colleague and friend, Leo.
Colloquially known as the chemist. Hello, I've got a degree in chemical engineering and about 5 years in the space. Can't believe we're actually doing this after months of planning, to be honest. Yeah. Very exciting.
And it took, 8 seconds for you to mention the engineering degree?
Well, there you go. It's a big part of my personality.
Right, so what are we doing here? Why are we here?
Well, so I believe we're recording a podcast series called Cellmates, creatively named by you, I believe. And yeah, we've got a very exciting first guest, a guy called Claudiu Bucur, who's the CEO at a early stage battery startup called Piersica. Yeah. Absolutely ecstatic to have him on, to be honest. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, likewise. We drove up, didn't we, to meet with him.
We did.
And so, yeah, excited to do that one in person. And yeah, excited for people to hear what he had to say. Yeah, let's give him a go.
See you there.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Cellmates podcast. Today we have with us the CEO and founder of Piersica, Claudiu Bucur. He's kindly met us in person here in South Florida. We've got Leon here as always, and myself, Mike. So yeah, welcome. We're really excited to speak to Claudiu and get his insight on multiple things. How are you doing, Leon?
Yeah, well, thanks. Pleasure to be recording another episode. Pleasure to have Claudiu here. So, yeah, Claudiu, thanks for coming on.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
That's a pleasure. I guess maybe the best place to start, and something we like to do often, is taking us through your journey a little bit in terms of your journey into the world of batteries, and I'll let you sort of freestyle on that. So yeah, you can tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, actually, I did not start in battery. My studies, my PhD and postdoc were in polymers.
Okay.
So I did polymers, then I did polymer applications, electrochemistry, corrosion applications. And then I always wanted to do something related to energy. And I got this job at Toyota where they had a corrosion problem. So I got in there because they had a corrosion problem. My background was solving corrosion problems. And I worked, you mentioned John Muldoon earlier. I worked with John Muldoon there for 8 years afterwards. And that's where sort of I learned battery. And that's so my battery training has been 100% in the industry. I did not have academic training in the battery, which is, I have sort of my perspective is very much different from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you say, yeah, most people we've worked with, spoke with, have the academic or PhD background. So yeah, definitely interesting to get that insight. How do you think that's like differentiated your approach or your philosophy around business?
Well, usually the startups come out from the academic world. You have sort of successful professors who have many projects, big labs, and they apply for sort of government grants like SBIRs or DOE grants. And as they get those, they set up a company around a specific technology with a postdoc at the head of the company. This is a traditional model. So basically, the effort is to take a technology that they developed, which is not necessarily it's applicable in battery, but it's a little piece of a battery, a little piece, and then to wrap the rest of the battery around that, make the battery fit to the technology, create a battery around the technology best they can, right? So this is a traditional approach. For me, it was completely different. So because I learned battery in the industry, I always started from the end. So my thinking process always has been, what type of battery does the consumer want? Okay, this battery with these parameters. How much is it different than the existing battery? What's the gap?
Yeah.
And then what technology do you need to get there? So completely different in terms of approach, in my opinion. So basically, we started with a battery, and we identified what technologies are missing, invent those technologies, and basically the end product, we started with the end product.
Yeah.
So I think this is a big difference from the conventional approach, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say that end product looks like? Like, what characteristics does it have? And then what, obviously, you Piersica build for different types of consumers. So did you have one in mind? Was it more broad?
Well, we want to create so that the important parameters for a battery are energy density.
Yeah.
This is how the new battery techs get adopted. And this is based on history. So lithium ion was adopted in the late 80s, early 90s to replace, and it completely replaced the existing battery technology, which was nickel metal hydride and lead acid. And how did it do that? It was not cheaper. It was not more safe. It had not even double the energy density. It had about 50% more energy density. So that is how lithium ion did it. So it was a lot less safe, a lot more expensive, but it had higher energy density. And because of that, the market started to adopt it. Okay. So I designed the same approach. So we are developing a battery that has twice the energy density of the conventional battery, volumetric and graphene. And the question was, what technology do we need to make that happen? And the application is across the board, just like lithium-ion application is across the board. So if you think like this, immediately you have a different approach. For example, in solid state, there are several classes of materials. You've got ceramics, you've got glasses, and you've got polymers. These are the materials that you make the solid conductors from. And if you start with math related to cell design, which gives you the energy density, immediately you can cross out ceramics and glasses because they are 3 to 5 times heavier than the liquid electrolyte.
Really well.
So basically, in a conventional battery, let's say 30% of the volume of the battery is electrolyte, approximately. So if you swap that space with a material that is 5 times heavier, there's no way in hell you can get high energy density. Forget about it. So you're just not going that route. This is what I was discussing, the differences in how you start a company. But if you start a company around a material, you got a ceramic conductor, so you start a company around that. You don't think about the end. You say, well, you'll figure it out. But if you start with the end, you just don't have that option. You will never reach target with that material. And that narrows you down very specifically to either what you have or what you don't have, and you need to innovate.
Throughout that process of like that selection process, away from selecting polymer, like why lithium ion? Like why did you choose that chemistry? Is that because of why did you choose the chemistry that you did choose ultimately?
To have this type of advantage in energy density. So what options do you have? You have lithium, sodium. These are single ion. The ions have a single charge. In the battery, the ions move from between electrodes. Okay. And these are the ions that move. In the lithium ion battery, the lithium ion moves. In the sodium battery, the sodium ion moves. Then you got multivalent options. And you got aluminum batteries, zinc batteries, magnesium batteries. This would be sort of what people focus on. The energy density are not there for these batteries. So if you do the math, again, based on cell design, the sodium ion battery, the best you would ever do is about 2/3 the energy of lithium ion. So a battery based on sodium versus a battery based on lithium with its best electrodes and its lightest electrolytes, this is what it will do, about 2/3 the energy density. So if your game is energy density, you want to pick the battery that gives the highest energy density. So that's lithium.
And do you see a world where advancements in both sodium and lithium, they can sort of coexist in the general ecosystem, or do you think it's going to go just purely down one path?
Well, it depends on cost. So sodium is significantly cheaper. It'll probably be similar in cost to lead acid. So we're talking $10 to $15 per kilowatt hour, whereas lithium ion current like a high energy density lithium ion with NCM cathode is at about $115 per kilowatt hour. And the cheaper version of this battery with a cheaper cathode, the LFP cathode, is around $60 per kilowatt hour. But a sodium battery can be $10 to $20 per kilowatt hour. But the energy density, so it depends on the market, right? If you want electric planes, you're not going to use sodium. Okay. Now for cars, maybe doable if it advances a lot. Now here's the kicker. You got 2 types of energy density: volumetric and gravimetric. Okay. Volumetric means think of the battery that Tesla has between the wheels.
Mhm.
It has the battery pack. And you got the cans, the cylindrical cells, the cans, right? So if you have, and let's say they can fit, I don't know, 50 by 20, let's say, right? 50 on the length, 20 by the width. If you increase the energy density, now those batteries become smaller, so now you can fit more. Okay, that's the volumetric energy density. So you can fit, you have this fixed space, you can fit more energy, more batteries in the space.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's the gravimetric too, which means that they'll be lighter. But the gravimetric is directly related to cost. So gravimetric is energy per unit of weight. So watt hour per kilogram. Cost is measured per unit of energy. So cost is dollars per kilowatt hour. If you can squeeze more energy out of less weight of material, the energy proportionally decreases as well. The cost, the cost of energy. So if you double the energy density and the processes are similar,
The cost will go down.
you reduce the cost by half.
Yeah.
So now, how far can the sodium go and how high can and lithium ion go? You got to consider all those things.
And I guess with like reduced weight, you're going to increase the efficiency of the engines and stuff like that as well. Or is that all factored into the gravimetric energy density?
Gravimetric energy density is, well, there's two levels. One is at cell level, which means how much lithium exists in the battery, in the cathode. That's where the lithium comes from. And also, what is the voltage between the cathode and the anode? You multiply those two. So you multiply the quantity of lithium, it's called capacity. You multiply by the voltage, and it gives you the energy. Now, then you got the cell, right? Then for bigger applications, you make packs because you have to increase the voltage to hundreds of volts. So you need the arrangements in series. And now you have a reduction in energy density because of cooling, primarily because of cooling and temperature management. So you have anywhere between 15 to 30% decrease in energy density when you go from cell to pack. This is another area that is sort of changing rapidly. A lot of people are going to be left sort of behind because I don't see sort of awareness about this. When the cell is very, like 10 years ago, when the Model S came out, right, in 2011, 2012, the safety of the cell was very poor because they were using cells made for laptops, right? So the quality of the pack was paramount, right? So to engineer high safety, where all the safety came from the pack, they had to reduce a lot of the energy density. As the safety of the cell improves, the importance of the pack decreases.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Also the complexity.
Yeah.
But this means importance. So eventually you're going to have, if at the point that you have a cell that basically you can penetrate it as in an accident, and it has no fire. Okay. At that point, the pack is history. The pack is gone. You don't need packing.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Almost not at all.
Yeah.
So you can have batteries structurally included in the vehicle or whatever you want to build.
Yeah.
And basically temperature management becomes very passive or non-existent. There is no need to control, a lot less. And there is the possibility that you get a cell that works penetrated, that basically doesn't need to work. It just doesn't need to blow up. That doesn't blow up penetrated, which means you don't need a pack. So you can hook up each cell to control the charging wirelessly for each cell, and there's no need for any sort of temperature management, which is the bulk of the pack.
Do you see that as a development anytime soon in the motor battery?
This is what solid state battery is supposed to bring.
Because the danger is with the liquid electrolyte.
That's right. That's right. You have a lot less liquid or no liquid. And the gains, a lot of gains come in this time when you have a bunch of cells together. The safety is paramount because the explosions are big. And it's very important to have a lot of development at the pack to manage that. But if the cell becomes very safe, then the importance of the effort, the money allocation, investment, all that associated with pack development disappears.
But a lot of people out of business.
That's right. And then this is not being talked about, but this is coming.
Fine.
Part-time recruiter, part-time audio engineer. And
Do you see as any potential barriers to development in solid state to get to that point of safety? Speaking to a lot of people in the battery world, I speak to a lot of pessimists about the development of solid state, and maybe that's to their own benefit. But is there any world where you see solid state doesn't get there in terms of safety of the cell?
Well, solid state battery. Okay, so we've had commercial examples of solid state in very early on. So in the 60s, there was a lithium iodide battery, which was all solid, and it was implanted in the chest of the patient because of high safety.
Yeah.
And it ran a pacemaker. Okay, that was the first commercial case that I'm aware of. Then recently, the company called Blue Solutions, which is a subsidiary or spin-off of Bolloré in France, they have selling commercial all solid polymer-based batteries since 2010 to 2011, and those batteries go in EVs in France. Currently, I think in a bus. Yeah, so there are commercial examples. Again, this is, I think, it's not discussed. Solid state is discussed as if it's a an oddity. It's already around. It's just that, for example, for the Blue Solution example, the solid it was and is all solid. Okay, there is no liquid in there.
Mhm.
But they have limitations on the electrodes. So 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, 2010 nearly, the energy density that they had was pretty much on par or a little bit higher than conventional lithium ion. But in the meantime, lithium ion has increased because they had access to higher voltage cathodes, such as NCM series or NCA, whereas that battery was limited to the LFP cathode because of chemical compatibility. So they could not increase the energy density, but conventional lithium-ion battery did. Now, since then, there have been a plethora, basically 2 generations of startups, really, which are trying to create solid-state batteries with higher energy density. Okay, and really, the recent generation of startups, such as QuantumScape, Solid Power, Prologium, Factorial. Okay, so these companies they are not all solid. Okay, so this generation learned from previous generations, and with the existing materials that they have access to, which they use materials off the shelf pretty much. And in order to engineer the way around these chemical incompatibilities, they add some liquid electrolyte into the battery, be it ionic liquid or conventional liquid or other types of liquids. But it is a lot less than in a conventional battery, between 3 and 10 times less. So it is safer in that sense, but it is not all solid. But this approach works better than the older approach. So there's been this progress. However, none of these companies have yet a conventional pilot line, even though they have billion-dollar market caps. A lot of these are traded. So they all deal with prototypes. What's a pilot line? Well, pilot line is in conventional battery manufacturing. A pilot line makes 2-3 million cells a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
A lot of cells.
yeah, that's a pilot. A conventional manufacturing factory makes hundreds of millions of cells a year. Okay, so all these companies with billion-dollar budgets and so far still deal with pre-pilot, so it's prototype level, but the prototypes are much better quality than 10-15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is in this field there has been this improvement.
Yeah.
Now the next wave of the next generation, what did I say? This is the second generation, the third generation, I think, which would be like our company and others, which are basically have started in the past number of years, recent years. Our job is to make that pilot viable. So we need to focus in on the type of technologies that allows this transition to pilot.
Mm.
We have already lots of very promising prototypes, but that move to pilot has not been demonstrated yet.
Yeah. So you and the other companies you have the ambition to sort of or fast track that and just be more focused on how quickly can we get it to a pilot level battery?
Well, I think this would add value to the space.
Yeah.
So this would mean that you can't really focus on the startups coming out of the academia because they're not set up to do this. They're set up on some technology and then layering the battery around it.
Yeah.
We need more approaches where they start at the end and develop technology from the beginning, develop technologies suited for the final product.
With the aim of a pilot.
With the aim of a pilot line.
Forgive my ignorance, but has there been any like large scale or like well publicized like pilots that have like gone wrong, like where people have gone, right, we're going to build a large scale amount of these cells, and it either hasn't, they've not been able to build it at the scale that people intend, because maybe that will be like a reluctance as to why these companies wouldn't do that. Or does that not happen?
Well, that's not how that's a good question, but that's not how it works. Like nobody would start the effort to produce 2 million cells
If they didn't know.
and then throw them away.
Yeah.
No, even if they worked.
Mhm.
So in order to manufacture these cells, you already need a beachhead market.
Yeah.
So you need to be further. The technology needs to be more mature than what it is now.
Yeah.
So you need to have an established beachhead market, an established agreement with a small market,
Yeah.
because they're going to need to absorb
Yeah.
a couple million cells from you.
Yeah.
You can't just make them; they'll be perfectly good,
Yeah.
and then you
So
pump them out.
they're aware that there's going to be like issues or like potential gaps in what you want.
Yeah, I think that it has to do with strategy too.
Yeah.
So in order to roll out a pilot like this, like I said, you need a beachhead market.
Yeah.
But a lot of the companies that I see, in order to simplify the story and attract investment from VCs, who are not really versed in the space,
Uh-huh.
the companies sell, oh, we're going to put these in EVs, right? And this is nobody's been able to follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is unnatural.
Yeah.
This is not. Why do I say it's unnatural? It's never been done before. So the only example that we have is the advent of lithium ion.
Mm-hmm.
If you can look at the history of lithium ion, commercialized in 91, in 2010, you see the first entry, significant entry, not significant, the first entry into EV via Tesla, right? And now it's 2024, right? So it's this 30 plus years since 91. And you still do not have adoption on the EV level. This is lithium ion. This is 30-year-old. This is technology with 30 years of commercial track record.
Basically, an ancient technology.
So how are you going to jump directly to this point with a very early and technology that doesn't have sort of the ability to have evolved like lithium had? Is not viable in my opinion. Okay, so that is why you cannot go to pilot, because you cannot establish a beachhead market, because none of the OEMs want your battery because it doesn't tick. So you cannot start with a commodity market because you got so many boxes to tick.
Yeah.
That requires 10 years or whatever in the commercial sector to make all those improvements. But the problem is, if you make the story realistic, you don't sound as good as this type of promises they have, or this is already out there. So this is a challenge. Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like almost an impossible task, really, right? You've got to develop something that you get a huge contract from an OEM before you can start getting to pilot line. So, I mean, what do you think would be the first step or even the final step in achieving that? What needs to happen in the market?
Well, it's impossible if it's done this way. If it's done this way, I agree with you. It's like a wall, and you keep running into it.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to go around the wall. So basically, you gotta be more humble and pick your beachhead market, a beachhead market that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So fewer cycles, slower charging, but a market that has a lot of advantage from high energy density. And these markets exist.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you've got a product that offers a lot of benefit and it can be adopted. And number two is you got to run cheaper, like your operating costs. Like let me give you an example. In the battery manufacturing industry, a pilot costs $20-30 million, right?
Yeah.
And you have, I don't know, 25 to 50 people working there, something like that. Okay. The operating cost of this would be, I don't know, a few million a year,
Yeah.
plus the capex that I described.
Yeah.
This is very low if you compare the budgets of some of the companies that I mentioned.
Yeah.
These companies are not a pilot, but their budgets are hundreds of millions per quarter. Doing what? So you can't have these high budgets and you can't aim at these markets. This way is, like you said, it seems impossible. But if you change the paradigm, you stop running into the wall, you reduce your operating costs, and you find a market that makes sense, then you've got a strategy, I think.
I guess this brings us back to what you guys are doing at the moment. I read a few articles in preparation for our meeting, and the spaces it mentioned, and this was a few years ago, was like space, military, wearables, orbital electronics, and robotics. Is that your sort of vision with that, to try and get into one of those markets to demonstrate sort of scalability?
Yes. So it's very difficult. So there are many parameters that a battery needs to have. And the more commodity the market, the more you need to tick the box for every single one. So, for example, you've got energy density, we discussed that. Then you've got cycle life. Then you've got charge rate. Then you've got cost, safety. Okay. Bob Gallian calls them the 5 golden rules, right? So when you develop new technology, you cannot hit all of them. When you hit all of them, this is not new technology anymore, it's commodity.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way you do it is you provide a huge advantage in 1 or 2 of them, but the other ones are really lacking. This is realistic.
China.
So you need to find markets that really values what you got, but it doesn't really need the others.
Yeah.
And some of the markets that you mentioned, you have such markets. Like think, for example, I don't know, I'm just throwing examples out here. Like for a car, currently you need 1,000, 2,000 cycles. Okay. And this will give you 20 years of life. Like it is what a car needs, right?
Yeah.
If you go to stationary storage, you probably need 10 times that amount of cycle life because you need the system to last 50 years. Okay. So I see a lot of startups try to enter stationary storage. That is very tough. Okay. Then you go to electronics. How long do you use a phone? Right? It's like 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
So your cycle life requirement is much smaller. And there's lower than that. How about electronic readers like a Kindle, for example?
Yeah.
Or one of these smart watches. I mean like a Fitbit.
Yeah.
Like how like you charge those maybe once a month.
Days plus.
There you go.
Gotcha.
And also you use something like this for a few years. So basically there are markets that only need less than 100 cycles.
Yeah.
As opposed to 2,000. So there are ways to do it. Yeah.
There's one other thing I wanted to touch on was and I think we just sort of touched on it in terms of talking about the big players in the battery space at the moment and where you guys are at, and sort of redesigning how the approach that needs to be taken for success to get stuff like pipelines is like the funding landscape in general and sort of getting funding. From my side of things, from my understanding, the landscape's changed a lot in the last few years in terms of obtaining funding, working with VCs, the perspective VCs have on their return on investment. I guess I'll leave this very open, but how would you say that the landscape has changed in the last few years, and what do you think needs to continue to change in order to achieve, stuff like the grand net zero goals and all that sort of stuff, and the part that investment in VC and PE has to play in that?
Well, I'm going to answer your question sort of to be useful for other people who want to do startups. So you've got several options for investment that I have learned so far, and this was new for me as well before I started. And we do have an excellent CFO on our team, David Jacobs, who was a banker, so he taught me a lot of things. But you've got angels and super angels. Okay, these are individual people who have been successful and have sort of savings, or they have investment money. This type of people can write you checks from 5,000 all the way into the millions. This is sort of the first entry point in terms of raising money. Then you've got venture capital. Now, venture capital comes with a lot of history. In our current time, as opposed to, let's say, 5 years ago, in my opinion, there's a lot of pain in the system. In other words, a lot of companies, there were a lot of investment in a lot of companies, which was sort of exacerbated by the history of COVID. Everyone's staying at home, a lot of money thrown, and now the results are not coming. And a lot of people are in a lot of pain in terms of their invested money. So a lot of these funds are upside down. So the VCs are having a lot of time raising money themselves because they also have to raise money, right? This will be the second sort of echelon, right? So these people write you bigger checks. So you need a lead, and then you have follow-ons. The lead basically takes 20 to 50% of your round, and then the follow-ons basically follow the lead. You'll negotiate a term sheet with the lead. It's challenging to find leads in the technical space. A lot of the conventional leads, they got burned. And now they feel like they don't really know how to select the technologies. Okay. And then you got OEMs. There are OEMs which have corporate venture efforts, corporate venture capital, the CVC, right? And these guys, their priority is not the return on investment. It's how much value you can offer to the OEM. So if you have something that they find as valuable, they can integrate. This is what they want. They want to integrate. And if you have something they can integrate, then they're likely to support you. These guys don't really care in terms of how much they put. They have access to bigger budgets. And so this has actually there's a sort of a competition, or not competition, but there's different aims between venture capital groups and corporate venture capital groups. The VCs really want to push your valuation down, and the CVCs don't care about the valuation. They care about the alignment with their company. Yeah. And they're ready to throw more money. And there's sort of this interesting tension between VCs and CVCs, because the corporate venture groups will likely take on higher valuations from you, and this puts the venture, and it makes the venture people very uncomfortable. Right now, there's a huge downward pressure on valuation. So a few years ago, a lot of the companies that we have been discussing, very high valuations. It's not likely to happen now in this environment. So yeah, so this was happening. And then at the same time, you got grants, which you also have to pursue. Yeah. You have to apply to grants. You have to work with people who know how to write grants. And this is basically money that comes, it's not against any sort of shares. So there are others, it's more difficult to spend. You have to prepare budgets and you have to deal with bureaucracy. But that's another option that you have. So these are your four options.
The grants, is that like the DOE, the DOD, or is it other institutions? Because in my head, the CVC type investment sounds like it might almost align with some of the stuff that the DOD does, for example.
Yeah, many times they follow. So there's a lot of following. Yeah. I've been so surprised to see how the venture people, they do not really venture. Like there's no venture in venture. Yeah. They only want to follow. Yeah. Only want to follow. And nobody wants to stick their neck out. I have not been in this space for decades like others. But this is what I see right now. So I don't know if it is because it's not always like this, or it's always like this, but everybody follows. Everybody's just looking for someone to lead, and then everybody flocks on that deal. But not, so that's the situation. And a lot of these follow the DOD or the DOE.
Yeah. So are they often the sort of innovators or the ones pushing the boat out, as it were?
Yeah, so that there are funds that basically double down on grants that you win. Yeah, yeah, and we've won a number in the defense space as well as with the NSF. We've won. We apply often. So yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I'm curious as to the process of obtaining those grants and how success rate and stuff like that. I don't know if that's something you're willing to share. So it's just about my curiosity. It's just interesting, right? Particularly with your level of your involvement in a business, like it must just be nerve-wracking every time that goes out the door, and like the excitement of them coming through, etc. What's that process been like?
Well, I think it is nerve-wracking in the sense that what's the success rate? Well, first you have to work with a group that really, it's like doing your taxes, unfortunately. So basically, if you do your own taxes, you're likely to have the IRS at your door.
Yeah.
It's a similar situation, especially with the defense. I mean, the submission is so complicated.
Yeah.
It's like, forget about it. You need an expert. So, but if it's done properly, you have a chance. I am not privy to the selection criteria.
Yeah.
To me, a lot of time it doesn't make sense, but it's not my money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but it's something that and it takes a lot of time, and if you do it right, it costs money. Like, but you have the opportunity to win money as well.
Oh yeah, part of the reason for asking the question, a lot of our clients will hire grant writers from us, and like obviously it's like they have the perception of if you hire me a good grant writer, then I'll just win every grant. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes even the best ones are like, well, for example, we work with a company, Nth Cycle, who do like a lot of recycling in Boston. They do a lot of recycling materials. We help them get a grant writer, and I was speaking to that person. They were like, well, yeah, even me, I know how to write them. I know how to follow the processes. But sometimes I'll think, well, yeah, we're assuring for that, and it won't work, or vice versa. They'll think, I don't think we've got much chance of winning this grant, and it'll come to like so even someone at that level isn't able to predict the likelihood. Which, like you say, you're not privy to the selection process. It's almost like a bit of a
it's a black box.
Yeah, black box, exactly.
I'm sure there's a lot of interests that go in opposite direction.
Yeah.
So this is beyond my head.
Yeah.
Above my head.
Yeah. Well. Anything else, Leon, you'd like to discuss, mate?
No, I think all I said is it's an absolute pleasure to sit down with you, Claudiu, and pick your brains and understand about the battery world as the humble recruiters that we are. And
He's a chemist, actually.
Wow.
Part-time chemist, part-time recruiter.
There's a reason that I'm a recruiter and not a chemical engineer. But yeah,
great.
I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming.
Nice to meet you guys.
Cheers, thanks, Claudiu. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, that's great. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the time.
Well, that was absolutely fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, Claudiu clearly has a vision about how batteries should be built, and is sort of a reverse engineering approach as to how they should build it, and not just focus on one specialist area, but to build like the perfect battery is sort of how I see his vision. Which good luck to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to get the insight from person making all the decisions in this type of business. He certainly had a lot of interesting views about the wider battery industry and where people can make a difference. So no, fascinating to have me on, and what a great first episode, I think.
Completely. Thanks so much for having him on, and we'll see you next week. We've got Bob, haven't we?
I think it'll be an interesting one. A man with a lot of experience at the top of the chemical industry, and now trying his hand in a exciting early stage startup.
Yeah, I think really interesting to get someone who's a leader in his space and been involved internationally for a large chemical company. To get his input into what now is a whole new challenge and set of challenges for what he's trying to achieve. So yeah, I look forward to speaking to you or hearing from you all then. Is that how this works?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think they listen to us.
Yeah. So I'll just speak.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.